Service! Hey everyone, welcome to Chef Sense. I'm your host, Chef Massey. We have Sam Rheaume from Jasper Hill Farm. Absolutely love Jasper Hill Farm. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. We have a really dreary Vermont day out the window here. Pretty slushy. It's not
Yeah,
great.
I know. It's kind of the same here. Is this mud season or is this a joke? So, Jasper Hill, I have always been a huge fan of what you guys do. There's such a variety and this artisanal cheese movement that just continues to flourish, in our country. You guys are just this epicenter of inspiration, in my book. And I get so much from what you guys do and profiles. It's like magic. So yeah, can you go into what you do there at the farm and work into the history a little bit?
I'm on the sales side of what we do here. I do sales and marketing. I work with direct to consumer marketing. I design all of our packaging, fun campaigns, I suppose.
Yeah.
But we're a small business, and we're about 100 people total. While those might be my main roles, if it's the busy season right before the holidays, I'm underground in the cellars, like wrapping bark around Harbison, or wrapping up wheels of Bayley Hazen Blue to go out to our customers around the country. It's a little all hands on deck while also
Right.
trying to do
Right.
what we do. So, and I guess just some background about Jasper Hill. Jasper Hill Farm, and as it relates to the artisanal cheese movement in America, was born at just the right time in a lot of ways. So back in the late 90s, brothers Andy and Mateo Kehler, they had grown up visiting Greensboro, Vermont, where our cellars are located up in the Northeast Kingdom, about 25 miles south of the Canadian border. So we're up in the tundra highlands of Vermont, way out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
They grew up spending their summers in Greensboro and, riding their bikes around, going from farm to farm, spending time with the animals, with the locals. And the place came to mean a lot to them, and sort of the bucolic beauty of Greensboro was always this sort of nexus of their imagination of where they would ideally like to spend their lives, a meaningful place with people that they love. And in the late 90s, the fluid milk market was going through some heavy pressure to drop prices. So, these mega farms in the Midwest were saturating the market.
Sure.
Farmers were having to take cut on 100 count of fluid milk. And in Vermont, especially in this area, because of the sort of varied terrain, herds are necessarily like 200 head or lighter. So small farms relative to, like a massive operation, industrial operation that has thousands of animals. And so the Vermont dairy farmer went through a near extinction point in the late 90s, early 2000s, where the math wasn't working for a small herd. Keeler brothers saw this happening, and they saw it having a dramatic impact on the landscape up here, in that summer homes were being built on top of pasture lands, right? So they got their heads together and they pooled every cent that they had. And they said, what can we do to bring the most value to this agricultural legacy of this landscape in order to preserve a working landscape and not see it turned over into something that is a little more barren and lacking character and not supporting a local economy. If it's a seasonal economy, the people who live up here year round, they begin to suffer as well. So they used cheese as the model of how do we imbue as much value into this agricultural product. The best way to do it is to make a fancy European style cheese that you are cellaring, that you're taking care of. You're soaking it in labor, love, time, and attention, and creating this food that is irrefutably, outrageously delicious. That's so crucial to what Jasper Hill is trying to do on an economic and social front, community and economy, because what they're trying to do is use cheese as a lever to help reinvigorate a rural landscape by accessing markets that have high amounts of wealth concentration, right?
Hmm.
So that was one of the big impetuses, is like, we want to save our community, we want to see the elementary school not close, and we want to do it
Right.
by making the best cheese possible. So 2003 was their first ever release. We just celebrated 20 years last year.
No, that's amazing. Congratulations.
Thanks.
So looking at the types of cheeses, I mean, you guys have, is it 13 different types of cheeses overall?
Oh, it's about to be more.
Great.
Because
Fantastic.
we always have an experiment going in the back of one cave or other, and
Yeah.
we have a couple that we're excited to share with the world this year. But
Mm.
yeah, I think our core collection amounts to about 13 steady cheeses.
Okay. Yeah, and over the years of using you guys, I mean, there's a few that I haven't, but I mean, I love the Harbison.
Mhm.
There's just, I mean, to be honest with you, there's just not any that you guys do. It's just beautiful, or looking at that Cabot Clothbound Cheddar, even
Mhm.
taking that rind and like if I'm making polenta, just what's left of that rind, maybe shaving a little bit in there to get that nuttiness. And then, but as
Mhm.
I'm doing my cream, putting that like you would like a Parmesan wheel or, pecorino, you just save that hard end and just let it make magic in your sauce or in the polenta. I was using actually that cloth bound with this Abenaki flour, which is an indigenous in the New England
Mhm.
area that the Abenaki Indians use because I'm indigenous as well. So I try to celebrate not just my farming side of my family, but my indigenous side because it's just awesome. So, using your product, I mean, it's just constant inspiration, or the Bayley Hazen. And then you guys, I know you said with marketing, you do like with your events, you do some raclette like the Alpha Tolman. Did
Oh
you
my
say something about
goodness.
sending that to Belgium too?
Yeah, yeah. So Whitney actually is our main racletting cheese these days. We
Okay.
designed it specifically to be like an immaculate melter. So just to kind of like break it down, I guess for your listeners, we have, and I guess the best way to talk about this is through our cellars facility, right? So
Yep.
back in 2007, just before the economy nearly
Yes, I do
imploded,
remember that. Yep.
um,
Uh,
the Kehler brothers, were able to secure um, a big loan to essentially pump a hillside full of TNT, blow it up, build a 22,000 square foot underground cheese bunker with
hmm
7 specialized vaults for affinage, or the maturation and finishing
Yep.
of the cheese. And those are the cellars at Jasper Hill. Cabot Clothbound actually, which is a traditional bandage style cheddar. So like what you would see with an English cheddar, like
hmm
Montgomery's. That's a cheese that's a collaboration that with Cabot Creamery that started back in 2003.
hmm
They were seeing the birth of this American artisanal movement, and they're producing much more commodity style cheddar generally, but they have such high quality milk coming in from local farmers. They wanted the opportunity to do a traditional bandage style cheddar and like bring Cabot into a more specialty shop setting, but they don't
mm.
have the facilities to do that. So they called up a bunch of cheesemakers around Vermont, and we were the only ones to like call them back and be like, we'll take 50 wheels or whatever we could handle at the time of your cloth bound, and we'll do all the maturation, we'll brush it, we'll age it. Back in 2006, it won Best of Show at the American Cheese Society Awards. So Andy and Mateo went down to the bank with a wheel of cheese and a trophy
Oh,
and said,
wow.
give us some money. We want to make this underground cellars. So that was built in '06. And really all of the styles that we make are sort of, they're part and parcel, not only to our environment, our terroir,
hmm
the landscape, which we
hmm
can talk about later, but also to those vaults. So Harbison, for instance, exists
hmm
in the first of our vaults, which is our bloomy rind vault. So bloomy rind, if you think of that white brie-like, it's a penicillium mold that is the major component, as well as
mm.
geotrichum, some yeast as well. And that vault has a high degree of air exchange because those molds require a lot of oxygen to really thrive.
Mm,
That's a very different environment from, say, Vault 3, which is where Alpha Tolman and Whitney, which are alpine style cheeses,
right.
mountain style cheeses, like your Gruyères, your Comtes, your Appenzellers,
Yep.
they have a more stagnant environment. You walk in and air feels heavier and it smells more densely
Hmm.
of proteolytic processes. So it's really the cellars themselves, this unique facility that we have that kind of gives us this ability to have a broad catalog stylistically.
Which is pretty amazing. I'm, even looking at like the outer, like the Oma. Can you kind of
Mhm.
describe that cheese a little bit? That's interesting.
So Oma is another one of our collaborative cheeses. Originally, we built the cellars as a means to help aggregate and help mature cheese for other cheesemakers around the state. So a lot of Vermont farms are small. They don't have access to like getting their cheese onto a pallet to get into
Mm,
the supply chain to a distribution hub, and then distributed further than like maybe just our region. But we were trying to leverage the volume that we were able to do with Cabot Clothbound.
mm,
We'd stack a pallet 3/4 high with Cabot Clothbound, and then on top we'd have other local cheeses, some of which we were helping to age, some of which we weren't. That was sort of the original
right.
um, goal of what we could do with the cellars and leverage a higher volume product like Cabot Clothbound. Oma is produced at the Von Trapp farmstead
Yep.
down in Waitsfield, Vermont. And those are the same Von Trapps as from the
Yep.
Sound of Music.
Yes.
Um,
Edelweiss.
Edelweiss, exactly.
Don't ask me
So
why I know that. I
should I
musicals.
should I
Okay.
ask?
It's the wife. It's the okay.
Hey, I used to perform in musical theater. There's no shade here. I was Jean
Well,
Valjean
thank
at
you.
one point. But
Nice.
so the Von Trapps produce that cheese down
Yeah.
at their farmstead in Waitsfield, and then they ship it up to us. It's a washed rind cheese, so the appearance is kind of this orange with maybe a dusty overglow of like a light bloom,
Hmm.
and that orange is from a culture known as Brevibacterium linens. It's a bacterial culture that creates that sort of pigmentation.
Right. Yep.
And it coexists along with a lot of yeast as well. So aromatically, it smells more like funky, sourdough bready,
Yep.
sometimes a little like suede, almost
Yes. Love it.
animally.
Yep.
Um, and, you know, a lot of folks might be a little anxious to try their first wash rind cheese, but I would always say the bark is worse than the bite. So despite having a slight pungency aromatically on the palate, Oma
Hmm.
is just buttery, like cultured butter, like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
complex butter, and sometimes you get a little bit of fruit, or even like a cured meat kind of flavor, like a
Right.
salami prosciutto
Yeah. That would
flavor.
be great to pair with that with some mostarda.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Nice.
Apricots,
Ooh.
and wash rind cheeses.
Yeah. That's where it's
That's
at.
what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Yeah,
Well, nice. Well, and
yeah.
also for some of our listeners, you guys are strictly cow's milk, correct?
Oh well, as of 2019, we've begun to dabble elsewhere.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Okay.
yeah, we so yes, our like year-round available catalog is all cow's milk.
Hmm.
We have a set of raw milk cheeses that are coming from a single herd that is our own herd up in
Yep.
Glover, Vermont. And that herd is like a whole other story because with our own cheeses and our own raw milk cheeses, we have a very high bar for milk composition as well
Hmm.
as like just milk cleanliness.
Hmm.
And it turns out a lot of what goes into like making a clean, well balanced milk is land management and nutrition, herd
Hmm.
nutrition. So we
Okay.
have entire facilities and teams set up to crop around 1,000 acres of hayland.
The sponsor today is BetterHelp. BetterHelp is an online therapy service. They have 30,000 licensed therapists in their network. It's really amazing, and I have enjoyed taking advantage of this opportunity with them myself, because oftentimes the intensity in the kitchen, the challenges in life, I have put myself on the back burner, and working with BetterHelp, it has supported me in continuing my own self-work, but also putting me back front and center in the game of being an effective leader, partner, and all of the above. So take that questionnaire. Once you do that, you go through that system and they filter those therapists that are fit for your specific needs. They get back to you in most cases within 48 hours or less. You can book those therapy sessions at your leisure that fit your schedule, which is truly amazing. I can say as a chef and, on the go and parent, it makes it very convenient. You could do those via the video chat, the instant message. Go to betterhelp.com/Chef Massey and you get the 10% off first month when you do that. And in that link, the questionnaire is there for you. So join me on sliding to the front burner because we deserve it. Back to the episode.
But I've gotten a little off topic here. The question was about milk supply.
Yeah. Well, just, sharing with people that are listening, that you are cow's milk and it's based off of that raw milk and so on. Yeah.
So they're all cows. And then we have 3 partner farms that are all mixed breed cows. In 2019, however, we partnered with 2 wonderful goat farmers who are coming from the West Coast, Ryan and Andy Andrus. Mm-hmm. And we facilitated the purchase of one of these old barns that went out of business in sort of the late 90s. And it went through a phase of attempted resuscitation. But now we have about a 200 head goat herd. Their milk is primarily going into bottles, actually.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Yeah. So we purchased a herd along with a bottled goat milk brand called Oak Knoll, which is now distributed sort of in the Northeast and along the Eastern littoral. Whenever we have excess goat milk, which isn't very often, but whenever we do, we have a cheese we make called Eligo, which is actually it's like Oma. It's a wash rind cheese that's a cow goat milk blend.
Okay. Very nice. Wow. Do you want to go through your rennet, the process?
Yeah. So I feel like I kind of have to tie some ends together here because the journey of a raw milk cheese is alinear. It's linear, but it involves a lot of hard work at every single stage. So all of our raw milk cheeses begin with the grass, right? The real goal, what we're trying to capture is the richness of that summer sun as it soaks into the grass. The cow eats it, it concentrates that flavor. It captures a lot of terroir, both in the types of vegetation it's eating, but also the microbes that are off of the land onto the cow's udder and make their way into the milk and actually do provide positive attributes to a raw milk cheese. That whole system of pasturing cows, getting them onto grass, but also making sure they have that good high quality grass through the winter to produce continually delicious milk is a whole cropping operation that's led by this badass farmer. Can I cuss? I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
This badass farmer Ellie Searles and her team, and they're doing a ton to sink carbon back into the landscape, create biodiverse pastures and really diverse feed for when the cows winter. So that grass gets concentrated into this very rich dynamic milk. When it comes into the creamery, the first thing you do when you make a cheese is you start culturing that milk, right? Yep. So we want to acidify it. And the main acidifiers in all of fermentation land are lactobacilli, lactic acid bacteria. And we carry over lactobacillus from every single cheese we make, a Solera system in beer, or a mother, or
that's
sourdough
awesome.
starter.
Yeah.
So we make yogurt. We take some of the whey, as well as some of the milk from every cheese make, and then we're incubating it for several days, making a yogurt, and
Mm.
then we're re-inoculating with a lot of these cultures. And these are sort of our wild and environment specific cultures, ones that
Okay.
thrive not only in our landscape, but very particularly in our raw milk creamery. So that's part of how we begin to make the cheese. As it cultures and acidifies it, once it hits a very specific point, a very specific pH, that's when we know, okay, it's time to set the curd.
Yep.
So we're pitching in rennet. Now, rennet, I'm sure you're familiar with, but for those of us
Hmm.
who might not be, is a complex of enzymes that are originally derived from the abomasum of a cow, the fourth stomach
Hmm.
of an unweaned calf, right? They are what is helping a baby cow digest, milk. The commercial, like commodity cheese, now uses what's called microbial rennet. So
Hmm.
they've actually been able to genetically modify, I believe it's fungi, to produce these rennet enzymes.
Okay.
Um, and that's the predominant rennet in a lot of commercial cheese. You also see animal rennet, but in a concentrated like vial. What we're doing
Okay.
is we actually have what are called vels, or just these chopped up abomasums, which are a byproduct of, you can't actually produce them in the US, so we get them from New Zealand. It's a byproduct
Okay.
of the New Zealand beef industry. And we're taking these little bits of stomach and we're activating them in a dealbuminized way. So every cheese make, you get curds and whey. We make ricotta out of some of that whey. So all of that fat and protein floats to the top, and you get this highly mineral, what's called sweet whey or cayette.
Hmm.
And we're infusing that with these actual vels, the abomasum, to make our own traditional rennet. This is how cheesemakers did it, ages ago. There are still cheesemakers in Europe who do it this way. This is ostensibly the hard way to do it, and it's because of variability in milk, and therefore the cayette, you get some variability in that rennet. But as soon as we started using this, we noted a marked difference in that like depth of flavor, this like lingering umami with Alpha,
Mm.
Tolman, and Whitney in particular. And once we started using it, Whitney won Best of Show at the American Cheese Society.
Oh,
So
that's
proof is in the
amazing.
pudding.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's great.
But it's this is all just to illustrate, right? It's like we're not like do it the easy way people. We're like do it because it tastes really delicious, and
Right.
that's the goal. And so we will go to virtually any length to like make the cheese just a little bit tastier.
And that's amazing. What a commitment. When you look at with your cheeses, do you have any like top sellers you recommend like for people?
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend the ones that are probably easiest to acquire and are also like the most, well, first of all, it's my job to say try them all, right?
Yeah, right,
I
right.
have to say that. But the ones that you can find in the wild most consistently are like Harbison, Cabot Clothbound, probably Bayley Hazen Blue.
Hmm.
Harbison is a bloomy rind cheese, so it has that brie type rind, and it's
Yep.
wrapped in spruce bark. And this is like the American original spruce bark wrapped cheese.
Yep.
We've seen others like appear, but Harbison was there first, and there's nothing like a good Harbison. So this one is, if you're a fan of brie and you like that like sweet cream, you like the slightly like button mushroomy aroma of a brie rind, you like sometimes it has a brassica flavor to it,
Yep.
like a cauliflower.
Yep.
Harbison like walks this balance between buttered popcorn and mustardy. When it's really young, it can smell like fresh raspberries, and as you get close to the bark that surrounds it, you get a
Hmm.
little bit of that woodsy resiny kind of quality of the
Oh, okay.
spruce. It's this great gradient. It's a great cheese to enjoy
Yeah.
just on its own. Smack it in the middle of a cheese platter. It's pretty, it's round, it can, and you get this gradient of flavors, that buttercream
Yeah.
in the middle, and then as you get
Oh,
further out to the rind, it
yeah.
evolves.
The magic. It's all magical. That's one of my favorites too, by the way. What's your favorite cheese or cheeses that you have there?
I'm an Alpha Tolman super fan.
Ah, there we go.
I think like I obviously love all of the cheeses we produce, and I love them all for their own occasion and
Yeah,
uses. But Alpha Tolman is the cheese that I will always have on hand.
yeah.
Um, I find that it's like shreddability quotient
Oh
is
yeah.
uh is great. It like shreds well, it melts beautifully. It has like this depth and complexity of flavor. And just because I'm so close to the source,
Mm-hmm.
you just get a lot of batch variation. You know, every
Mm-hmm.
batch is like a new vintage of wine, and we're making a vintage a day basically.
Which is amazing.
So it's great for doing like vertical tastings, you know. You
Yeah.
can really drill down on what the standard flavors and aromas are, and then like
Right.
what other secondary and tertiary flavors and aromas can pop up due to whatever caused the batch to be different.
That really is amazing, and I think, for those people that are listening too, I mean, you can go on the website and look up, the profiles and pairing, which is great for people that
Mhm.
are learning.
Yeah, exactly. And it's our hope to get more sensory evaluation
Hmm.
resources out there for the community to use. You know,
Yep.
a big part of what we do is tasting the cheese as it ages.
Yep.
So every single batch has like a test wheel that
Yes.
accompanies it throughout its life. And we have a sensory program manager who is going through with both cheesemakers and
Hmm.
alphaneurs, and they're plugging those wheels, they're tasting, they're benchmarking, like, okay, here's what a 5 month alpha needs to taste like, here's what a six
Wow.
month alpha
Yeah.
should taste like. And just evaluating when the cheese is ready to get out there, because again, our goal of providing value in order to like build our local economy, our local community,
Hmm.
and to like sink carbon back into our landscape is all based on like how delicious that cheese is. So we need to be tasting
Right.
it all the time. So stay tuned for more
Which
sensory tools.
which is great. I mean, I don't think people realize that because, you look at a brewmaster and, everybody, as you look at like bourbons and tasting these things, and cheeses are the same way. And that skill set in that person tasting it, being able to recognize that they're matched up,
Mhm.
is
Yeah,
pretty,
and
pretty awesome.
it's about like standardizing the palate.
Hmm.
You know, it's one thing to make note of an aroma or a flavor, but it's another thing to calibrate a language between multiple people
Hmm.
and creating some sort of like standard by which, you know, multiple perceptions can align on a few basic vectors, I guess, right? So
Right.
the biggest things that our sensory teams of cheesemakers, affineurs, and our program manager are looking at are like our quantifiable like acidity, like sweetness, texture, very like tangible things.
Hmm.
And we kind of unify our we've developed our own unit of measure for the
Hmm.
final like, but is it good? And it's called the DF, or the deliciousness factor.
Yep.
So that's our like overall grading, and it's the composite of these other aspects of a cheese.
With cheeses, it's like, with farming, there's a season to it. Cheese rolls that same way. You,
Yeah, in fact, we have a cheese that capitalizes on the seasonality of cheese, Winnemere.
yep.
So Winnemere is a seasonal raw milk cheese that we make with winter milk. So when cows transition off of pasture and back into like boarded barn life for the winter, their diet is shifting,
Hmm.
as are their like caloric expenditures.
Hmm.
You know, cows, they're big beasts. It takes a lot of energy to walk out there to the field to graze around. So
Hmm.
summer milk tends to be a little leaner, whereas once they transition off of pasture for the season, there's a spike of, you know, relatively higher fat. Like in terms of
Right.
percentages, it doesn't look like a lot, but in terms of milk composition as it pertains to cheese making, has an
Right.
impact.
Right, yeah. And I love that cheese too, by the way. I know you guys deal with your volume and you're really focused on the business side of it. Do you guys offer any sort of like cheese pairing or cheese making classes for the community?
Yeah, so we do a lot of events out there whenever we are able to as a small team, and we do a lot with various restaurants, both regionally
Hmm.
and in further flung parts. Our biggest program that we run up in our neck of the woods is primarily geared towards cheese professionals or food professionals.
Hmm.
We call it Cheese Camp.
Oh,
It
cool.
happens in May.
Okay.
It's geared towards folks who are testing for the CCP,
Mm.
Certified Cheese Professional.
Yep.
And so we bring them up. We have a local lodge, the Highland Lodge, that has cabins. So we
Oh,
really go for
great.
that camp. We do take breaks and like sit out by the lake. Right at the center of Greensboro
Right.
is Caspian Lake, which is this beautiful glacial lake. They'll come up for a 3-day intensive that includes farm tours, cave tours, creamery tours, as well as hours of lectures that discuss, things like milk composition, talking about what happens to casein, as it's
Right.
getting snipped apart, what the proteolysis as, the impact of proteolysis as the cheese ages in the vault.
Right.
We also do sensory evaluation workshops. So it's a little more intensive and geared towards folks within the industry.
Yeah.
We're out at public events
Yeah.
as well, doing education and the like.
And that's amazing too, because I mean there have been farms here that are closer to me where, I've gone with some of the kitchen team and we've made cheeses,
Mhm.
and there's just, whether you're going out and picking or you're foraging, when you get the privilege to go into an operation like that, you're like, it's very enlightening and there's such a whole nother level of appreciation that's gained.
Yeah, and it's a lot of information to take in because, you
Science.
know, yeah, it's almost alchemy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I know
So
when we were making cheeses and you're going through the equations and the amounts and, you're cutting the curd and the beauty of like, taking that cheese and pressing it into its form and, not to mention the process of the aging or rind washing continually. And it's just unbelievable. So, yeah.
it's months of like patient, persistent work,
Yep.
which can feel a little quotidian at times,
Sure.
but when you get to enjoy that cheese at the end of the day, you can tell it's worth it.
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
we another just gonna give a quick shout out. Another event that we've invested a lot in over the years is the Cheesemonger Invitational.
Oh, very
Are you
cool. Yep.
familiar with that?
Yep.
It's down in New York, run by a very close friend of Andy and Mateo and Zoe, everyone who works here, Adam Moskowitz, and he's done a lot for the culture within the American artisanal cheese movement
Hmm.
to edify the cheesemonger, which
Yep.
they're the last person between us and the like happy cheese lover who's buying a wedge of Cabot Clothbound for maybe the
Right.
first time, right?
Yep.
And they're the ones who are the real storytellers and educators in our industry, and they
Sure.
do a lot to like bring the general public on board
Yep.
one mouth at a time, I guess.
Yeah.
So we get the privilege to like go down there during that event and participate with other producers who are our peers, and we
Hmm.
have a very sort of familial approach to other makers in this space in our industry in this country,
Yep.
where it's like a rising tide lifts all boats, and so we all get in there together and we get a lot of FaceTime with like the best and brightest of the mongers that are out there. They come from all over to participate in this event
Yep.
and compete to be the cheesemonger of the year.
And that's amazing too. It's funny. My next door neighbor is Matt Rubner, owns Rubner's Cheesemongers in Great Barrington.
Yeah,
So, going in there and seeing what Matt does and his team, he really celebrates the beauty of cheese from everywhere.
yeah.
And it's inspiring. So,
And the breadth and Rubiners is great, by the way. They're good pals.
yep.
And it really does behoove a cheese shop to like engage with the breadth of not
Mhm.
just what like we produce or even what's produced within the United States, but like there's so much tremendous, interesting cheese. And to be able to taste it in settings like that, where they're getting it with enough shelf life and they know how to care for that cheese and
Mhm.
allow it to sort of, you know, live its fullest life after it leaves the caves.
Mhm.
That takes a lot of skill and it takes a lot of passion. So we appreciate everyone in the industry
Right.
who's taking care of the cheese and really
Yeah.
like embracing the breadth. And there is a lot of different cheese up there. So
It's unbelievable. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Sam, I really do. I appreciate your time. I thank you for, jumping in on this episode, Chef Sense, and really sharing what I feel as an example to other cheesemakers. It's so inspiring to take what you all are gifted at doing and go, it's my job now to take that baton that you've handed me and make a memory that someone hopefully never forgets on the plate. So,
Well, speaking from my own experience, and I know the experience of a lot of people who have been here for a long time, um, it it makes you feel proud to see something you spent so much time and effort on
yeah.
get that extra level of veneration in a restaurant, and to find unique angles at like approaching the cheese
Hmm.
in a way that we might not be thinking of, and given our context. We're in the weeds
Right.
with very microscopic details. Sometimes you forget to back out and kind of appreciate a gestalt of mixing a cheese with a new flavor or treating it in a new way. So
Right.
much appreciation to all the chefs out there who
Yeah.
are using our cheeses, and to you in particular, chef, for thinking to feature us and having
Oh,
us
absolutely.
on the air.
Yeah, it's been great. Going to your website is the best way to, connect with you guys.
Yes, indeed. JasperHillFarm.com, or you can follow us on Instagram and talk to me personally, probably just DM.
Yeah.
We're very customer oriented. We do sell a little bit of cheese online, but we are more than happy to field. We get questions all the time via email
Okay.
or over the phone, from people who just happen to pick up a Harbison at a cheese shop, and they are wondering about what kind of wood is on the outside, or why
Right.
there might be a little bit of blue green
Hmm.
penicillium mold on
Yeah.
the bark, which is totally normal. It's totally normal. Um, but we are happy to entertain those questions, and you can
Great.
certainly learn a lot more about um, all of our cheeses. I feel like we only scratched the surface here, um,
Yeah.
and stay updated on what's coming out.
Go to the website, learn more. They've got profiles, they've got pairings on there. It's inspiring. Stay connected with these amazing people. And Sam, hopefully maybe we can do another episode with future stuff down the road.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if we do it in person, I'll bring the cheese.
You know what I'll do? I'll stop by King Arthur's Flour and then drop by. How's that sound?
Oh, I like that.
There you
Yeah,
go.
we'll do it
Yeah.
from the vaults. Yeah,
That sounds like a memory maker. So,
nice
all
and
right.
echoey. Yeah.
Yeah. Right, right. That's awesome. Well, all right. Well, you all take care and thanks again.
Thank you, Chef Massey.
Yeah, all right, everyone. That is a wrap. You can check us out if you like that. Subscribe. Also, the Instagram, Chef Massey. Let's keep it simple. ChefMassey.com. Have a good one. Bye for now.